What is going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing good and having an amazing day. Now, I honestly didn't think I was going to be making this video today, especially considering the last couple of years we've all had having to deal with the pandemic and everything. But I have some super exciting news, and I've actually just bought my first house. And honestly, I could not be more excited. Now, some of you might be thinking this is absolutely crazy timing, especially considering how buoyant the residential property market has been recently. But with that in mind, in this video, I'm going to cover all of the details as to why I've chosen to buy now, what sort of property I've gone for, and actually why I think it could be the best financial decision I've ever made. So just before we get into it, I know it is a bit cheeky asking before the video's even started, but I'd really appreciate it if you guys could smash that like button down below, as it just helps me out with the YouTube algorithm and gets these videos out to more people that might find them useful or interesting. And if you are new around here, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below and click that bell so you never miss a video. But with all that stuff out of the way, let's get into the video. Okay, so the first thing to cover is the question of why would you want to get into property? So property isn't something I talk about a lot on this channel because personally I haven't had any first-hand experience with it up until this point, but it's always been an asset class that's been impossible to ignore lingering in the back of my mind. My investment portfolio over the years has been made up almost exclusively of stock market investments, and one of the things that I think is so amazing about it is simply how accessible it is. So literally anyone out there can start investing from their phone, and you don't need a lot of money to get into it. You can literally start investing with as little as £5 to start learning the ropes and getting some experience. However, property on the other hand has a much higher barrier to entry, where traditionally you'd need around a 20% deposit of the total value of the property that you're intending on buying. So for example, in the area that I live within the UK, you can't really get a lot for less than £150,000, and that kind of money might get you a one-bedroom flat. So if you wanted to buy a property of this value, you'd need to be able to come up with £30,000 to cover that 20% deposit, which isn't an easy task. Obviously, this is just an example though, ignoring all of the government incentives and schemes out there at the moment. However, if you are able to break this barrier to entry, I truly believe that property is one of the best investments that you can make. This is firstly for the simple reason that everyone needs somewhere to live. So the reality is there's always going to be a certain amount of demand that just isn't going to go away. So whether you want to sell it or rent it out in the future, there should always be a certain level of demand. Long term as well, it's almost always more cost effective to put your money into buying a property and paying off a mortgage rather than renting. But there's also huge opportunity from making a return on the money that you've put into the property. And this is through an increase of the property value over time. And if we just look at the average house value over the last 10 years, you can see the average house price has increased by almost 50% over that time period. Now, this isn't an exact science, and if you look over a longer period of time, you can see there is some volatility where the house prices actually decrease in value over some years. However, long term, there is a steady incline pattern, which personally I don't think is going to change. So for me, I'm now in a really fortunate position where through being disciplined and saving over time and investing that money making returns within the stock market, I'm now in a position where I have enough money that I can actually break that barrier to entry and buy my first property. So the next thing to cover, and a question that some of you guys might be asking, is why have I chosen now to get into property? Because the timing might seem a bit odd. In just the last year, the housing market has gone absolutely crazy, and on average, house prices have actually gone up by 10% in just this year. So it might seem like I'm buying in at the top, and there could be a crash or a correction looming in the near future, especially as the stamp duty holiday is also coming to an end. So I personally wouldn't be surprised if that caused an instant drop in house values, as I believe over the last year, this has actually artificially inflated house prices. So the question that everyone wants to know the answer to is whether or not we're in a housing bubble, and are these current house values going to increase, stay where they are, or maybe even decrease in value? But the honest answer is no one really knows for sure what's going to happen. People can speculate all they want, but no one can actually predict the future. What I think is really important to do is basically just keep your eyes open and look at the facts. So personally, I wouldn't be surprised if house prices increased or decreased. I can see reasons why both could happen quite convincingly. So for example, there is a shortage of housing in this country, so that can see the values quite buoyant and actually see it continue to increase as there is more demand compared to the supply available. On the other hand, coming out of the pandemic, if we see a lot of people becoming unemployed when the furlough scheme ends and not being able to pay their mortgages, as well as interest rates increasing, this could quite easily cause a decrease in property values. So with this in mind, going back to the reason that I'm personally choosing to get into property now, it's the simple fact that it's almost impossible to time the market perfectly. And I personally don't know what's going to happen, but I'd rather be in the race than sitting on the sidelines watching. So what I mean by this is, yes, maybe the property market is overvalued at the moment. And maybe if I wait a year, maybe there'll be a decrease in value and I can buy a house at a better price. But equally, if I wait a year, house prices could continue to go up, and it could leave me in a situation where I can't actually afford to buy as big a house as I would have got before. I'm honestly not overly concerned about what house prices are going to do over the short term, and for me I see this as a long-term investment where hopefully the growth over time will overshadow all of the shorter term volatility, and it's a place for me to live. And as long as I do my part to try and get the best deal possible in the market that I'm buying in today, I'm happy, and I feel this will offset any potential issues in the future. Okay, so I now want to share with you guys some of the things that I've done to try and get a good long-term investment property, but also get a good deal in today's market. So first off, and probably the most important thing, is the location. So the area that I've chosen to buy in, I would say is an up-and-coming London commuter town. It's just a short walk away from one of the main rail networks to London, and once on the train you can be in the city in just under an hour. That might sound like a long commute to some of you guys, especially if you're doing it every day, but I feel the way the world's going at the moment, working from home is becoming far more relevant, and we're seeing flexible working being embraced by many companies, seeing the benefits going forward. The pandemic has actually shown that many companies can work just as efficiently with their staff working from home. So personally, I think going forward, flexible working isn't going anywhere, and we might see a lot of offices out there offering the option to maybe work a couple of days from home. So the reason that I'm talking about all of this is because if this is the way that society is going, people might be happier to live a bit further away from where they work if they're not having to make that commute every single day. I believe the pandemic has also made people appreciate outdoor spaces a lot more than they used to. And so with that, another benefit to the location that I've chosen is that it is still quite a rural area. It's also just minutes away from a national park and the coast. Now obviously location is somewhat subjective, but for these reasons I see that this specific area has huge potential for growth in the future, which would do wonders for the property value, but it's also an area that I personally like and would feel happy to live in, which is a big factor. Okay, so next up we have the type of property that I've gone for. So I've gone for a new build 3-bedroom terraced house. Now in terms of size, I've tried to stretch my budget as much as possible, and so working with the budget that I've got, the decision was whether or not to go for a 2 or a 3-bedroom house. I really think that going for a 3-bedroom will really open up a lot of possibilities in the future. For example, I could rent out one room and use that to help pay off the mortgage, and it will also give me the option to turn that 3rd bedroom into a designated office space, which will be really useful for productivity. So I hope that what I've done by stretching the budget will actually be the better financial decision in the long run. Now we have the fact that it's a new build property. So in all honesty, when I first started looking for properties, I wasn't bothered at all as to whether or not I got a new build or an old property. And honestly, I always thought they were overpriced for what they are. I always like the idea of buying something that's not necessarily in the best condition, then doing it up and adding some value to then sell on for a profit. But actually once I looked into all the government schemes available, it seemed like an absolute no-brainer to go for a new build. It seemed to me that the benefits of buying a new build using a government scheme massively outweighed the limitations. And honestly, from looking around over the last few months as to what's available, nothing massively stood out to me. So in terms of government schemes, the one for me that I think is a complete game changer is the Help to Buy equity loan. Now I have done a full video talking about the Help to Buy equity loan, going over exactly how it works and where I see the most potential. So if you are interested in watching that, I'll leave a link down below in the description and you can check that out. But the basic premise of how it works is that you can actually borrow up to 20% of the value of the property that you're buying, completely interest-free for 5 years, and then you use this money to go towards your deposit, so you then might be able to get better interest rates on the mortgage as well as reducing the monthly payments. So the part that is so appealing to me is the fact that you can borrow this money interest-free for 5 years. I mean, that is a ridiculous scenario if you can take advantage of it, because where else can you borrow money like this interest-free? Now I'm in a fortunate position where I don't actually need to use the equity loan, and I could put all of my own funds straight into the property. However, what I'm going to do instead is use the equity loan to free up my own cash to put into another asset class where I know I can make a return on that money. And specifically, I'll be putting this money into the stock market. So then at the end of the 5 years, when I need to pay back the interest-free loan, I'll have had 5 years of growth in the stock market. So then hopefully I can pay off that loan and keep all the profits that the investments have made over those 5 years. Now obviously doing this won't be for everyone, but for me in my situation, I feel incredibly comfortable investing in the stock market, and generally I make about 20% per year in returns. So I feel by taking advantage of this loan and freeing up my own cash and investing it, this could actually leave me in a better financial situation compared to if I bought an older property and did it up to add value. Okay, so this now leads us on to the part that you're all probably most interested in, and that is, what is it going to cost? So the basic list price of the property is £335,000. Now this is a lot of money, but I've made sure to do a lot of research into looking into the area that I'm buying in, seeing what houses of a similar size are on the market for and have sold for in the past. And actually, despite the fact that I'm buying a new build, which are usually sold at a premium, it is actually quite closely priced to other things on the market that aren't new builds. So I feel reasonably confident that I'm getting a fairly good deal. With that being said though, going through the house buying process is not cheap, and $335,000 is not at all what it's going to cost. So I'm definitely going to end up paying more than this original list price. And this is due to things like solicitors' fees, mortgage advisors, as well as optional extras for the house. So I'm going to go through all this information in a separate video, but in a lot more detail, going through all the hidden costs that you might not expect when buying a house. And hopefully this will give you guys a realistic expectation as to what it costs to buy a new build property. So if you are interested in that, stay tuned and keep an eye out for that one. Now, like I said before, I really could not be more excited about this. Buying a property really is a dream come true for me, and I can't wait to see what the future holds. I really believe that there'll be so many opportunities created from this move, and I can't wait to take you guys on the journey. When it comes to being a homeowner, there are so many financial implications that you simply just might not be aware of until you're put into that situation. So I hope to share as much as possible with you guys if you're not already on the ladder but want to get into property, and hopefully clear up some of the things that are really daunting about the whole process. Property really can be so confusing, and I'm bound to make mistakes along the journey, but hopefully you guys can learn from these and not make the same ones yourself. It's also so exciting to be able to have a dedicated office/studio, so hopefully I can start producing much higher quality content on a much more consistent basis. But there we have it, that basically covers everything for today guys. I really hope you guys did enjoy this one, and I can't wait to share more about the process with you. Now, if you did make it this far, thank you so much for watching. And if you did enjoy the video or feel like you learned something new in any way, I'd really appreciate it if you guys could smash that like button, as it does really help me out with the YouTube algorithm and just allows YouTube to share these videos to more people that might find them useful or interesting. Also, if you are new around here and like this sort of content around personal finance, investing, saving money and property, make sure to stick around and hit that subscribe button down below and click that bell so you never miss a video. Also, do let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Do you think the way that I'm buying a property is the logical decision? Or do you think I'm making a massive mistake and should buy an older property and remodel it to add value? I'd love to know your thoughts, so do let me know. Also, if you have gone through this process yourself, do you have any advice that you want to share? Or were there any obstacles that you had to overcome? As always, if you do have any questions for me, I'll make sure to respond to all comments, so just drop them down below as well. But with all that being said, take it easy guys and keep saving.